What's up, Chris?
What's going on, Jay?
It's
Happy,
just another Tuesday.
yeah, just a random old Tuesday, huh?
Yeah, this
For
is
those of
it.
you that don't get the joke here, it's election day today. Um, so welcome everyone to the Practice Playbook, where we're not going to talk about politics, probably, but we're going to help you
But are
and
we?
help firm owners and wannabe firm owners to navigate the road for their modern firms. I'm Chris. He is Jay, and we're the hosts of the show. Last week we introduced the Practice Playbook. It was our first episode, and what our intention was with the show. We talked about who we are, and why you should listen to us. So if you haven't listened to that show, go back and give it a listen. This week we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to start talking about those things that you can do, and specifically we're going to talk about automations, just as Jay's favoriteest thing to talk about of all time. So I'm excited to get to that. We'll highlight why automations can be helpful, how you can utilize them, and then we'll talk through some of our favorites. But before we get to that, let's get to the news.
Let's get to the
Uh,
news. But before you get to the news, I want to
Before I
talk
even get
about
to the news,
politics first. Not really.
oh,
Not
let's
really
go.
politics. It's not really politics.
Yeah.
But I made
Okay.
that comment. It's not just another Tuesday because it's been 11 months that we've been talking about how to develop a tax strategy, and we have not had any tax discussions because we didn't know the direction it's going to go. So hopefully this time next week we'll have a great idea of where we're going, have an idea of what kind of tax policies we're going to be looking at, and
Right.
dig in a little bit deeper there. So just really excited about that.
Yeah, it'll be nice to be behind us to know exactly how you can go forward. That is definitely true. And here's hoping that within a week's time, we'll know a lot of the things that I've read. Seem to think by around this time tomorrow, we should be in pretty good. Should have a pretty good idea, but you never know. And obviously, the final vote tally can be like a long way out, especially for what the House might end up looking like,
Very
because
true.
California has a few competitive districts, and in California you can mail your ballot in even as late as today, so long as it's postmarked by today. Very similar to the way you can mail in that 1040. If you get it postmarked, you're in good shape. This same thing is true of your election ballot in California, which means that it takes them a little bit longer to count that up from the presidential side. That historically hasn't mattered all that much, but in the individual races, it can make a significant difference. So we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on that. And hopefully next week we'll be able to tell you here's kind of some things to expect in 2025 and going forward. Um, but same as we've said all along, Jay, I think until it actually gets to Congress, until it actually happens, like it's all kind of conjecture anyway. So
Exactly.
maybe not,
All
but
speculation. But hey,
it's
maybe
all
that tax
speculation.
tax bill will that extender bill will finally get passed.
Yeah.
We'll
You,
see.
you know, a thing that definitely did at least make it through the IRS is that they increased the 401k limits for 2025. And this wasn't unexpected. This is not a big surprise or anything. They kicked up the regular contribution limit $500 to 23,500, and they did not raise your outside IRA limit. That stays at 7,000 for
What's the deal
2025.
there? I mean, go ahead and bump that up a little bit. I mean, let's go. Let's get that going. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
if you're over 55, you can.
you can, right?
So
And I'm
yeah,
sure that that's maybe a thing that you should talk to your new Congress people about as you vote them in. Have a conversation about that limit. Let them know. Um, there were also some IRS regulations that were updated to modernize the process for sales of property after Caesar by levy. This was the longest title. I saw it at first. It was like IRS updates policy for sale of property, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's look at that. And then I read it a little bit more, and then it was like, actually, it's very, very niche. And because it's specifically associated with when your property is seized by levy, and then you have to sell the property. And I was like, well, that's not as interesting, but it made it into articles on two separate sites that I was looking at as I was searching the news. And so I wanted to ask you, Jay, um, does this matter? Should we care about this?
to 99% of us, no.
Okay. Yeah.
Never dealt with it. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, there. That's kind of what I was afraid of.
right.
Um, Another thing that I read that made me sad. So, speaking of being afraid, the uh, the Treasury, I think, did a little study around the IRS and their priority service hotline, and found that there were $47 million of unidentified fraud losses. So people calling into the fraud line related to like returns that weren't theirs and like committed fraud for $47 million, which seemed like a lot because at least the way that the article that I read talked about this, it was only 575 returns. I tried to
Yeah.
like I didn't do the math, but that's like a lot. That's a lot of money. So
Yeah.
thanks.
People don't mess around with that.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but somebody was telling me somebody reached out to them or they got a letter from the IRS
Uh-huh.
claiming that somebody claimed $100 something thousand refund on their account,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they paused it because of the amount, but they did
Mm.
detect it and they did not allow it to go through. Because when that does go through, it is such a pain on that taxpayer to get that straightened out. Because with everything else with the IRS, it takes a lot of time and
Yeah.
phone calls and maybe even the tax advocate to get things like that straightened out. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's any reason to file as soon as filing season opens, it's that. Even if you have
Mm.
to amend your return, you know, that's the only reason I would say to file early and not extend. But, yeah, so.
Yeah, so that was tough to see. That now the good news is while they had the whiff on the 500 returns, it was something like 7,500 returns that were good though. So there were like a good ratio at least. I mean, I guess kind of. I don't sure we'd like to see that number go down, and certainly I think some of these even may have been some of those ones that were flagged like you were talking about, but still
Yeah.
pushed through. So that was kind of a bummer to see. A little more positive news. We've brought this up a whole bunch of different times historically on the show. You may recall that for the current year, BOI reporting was due at the end of the year for existing businesses, um, and because of the multiple different hurricane disasters that have come through this year, just like with returns, they have extended these reporting deadlines for that BOI reporting. Now, I think we'd tell you the same thing that we would tell you with respect to your return is just do it. Don't wait until the last minute. Like it's okay I mean, it's great that you have a reporting deadline that's extended for whatever reason, but these BOI returns, while they feel like new, different, and potentially challenging, I think Jay, you've said several times, not really, not really.
Yeah.
Once you get the information, it's pretty easy to knock it out. So,
I mean,
um,
really, there is no preparation for it other than knowing who owns the business and
yeah,
having name, address, and an ID. And, you know, each individual person could have their own FinCEN ID. You give that over to somebody that creates your reports for you. It's not very difficult to do it. It takes maybe 15 minutes and
there
it
you go.
doesn't ask anything harder than where do you live and what your name is. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's not very difficult. And I did not find it obtrusive or over inquisitive into my business. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So while you may have an extended deadline, you probably don't need to use it. It's probably best just to go ahead and get that knocked out so that you don't have to deal with it later.
Yeah.
That's it for our IRS and tax related news. In the accounting space, there's some very interesting news, some super exciting things happening. Some of them positive, some of them negative, and some of them like completely ancillary. Like I'm not even sure why this was a thing. So let's talk about the sad ones first. I saw this was hot news. Might not even be in the version that you're looking at, Jay. But KPMG announced some layoffs on their audit team, their U.S. audit-based team today, earlier this morning. They're laying off some people that because the people didn't want to resign, so their turnover levels are too low, so they needed to kick a few folks out. I think we've seen this across the big four a lot this year. There have been layoffs for several of the big four because they're just not growing quite as much as they had been. A lot of the consulting and advisory services are, while still significant, aren't growing quite as fast, and that means that they got a little capital and overhead that they need to cut. So some of the production team needed to get cut for them to be as profitable as they'd like. Now, I personally wish that the Big Four would kind of rethink about their business model with respect to this, because doing that just goes to like re-emphasize the circle of like, if you're not working really really hard, you're not going to be around for long, right? It just continues to make that spiral that we've talked about several times of how accountants and the accounting space is having challenges with recruiting and with bringing people on. Well, this is part of the reason why, when you know you can work at one of these big firms and then just be laid off. That's not great. And plus, it was associate and manager level people. This wasn't any partners, which means it's all of the people who were doing really right there in the workspace. So I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to practice management and how to build your team and how to build your team sustainably. And it looks like KPMG kind of missed the mark on this, although 300 people or however much it is maybe not a significant portion of their team. It's still not nothing.
So, question for you in the audit space: you hire a first-year senior out of college. What are they doing in an audit department nowadays? Are they still just ticking and tying, or are they actually jumping in and doing some of that work?
Yeah, it depends on the client a lot, right? So, and it also depends on the company. So, for some of those gigantic companies, if you think about Walmart or I don't know, Tesla or something like this, right? Some of these companies that are just humongous and probably have, and especially Walmart, that's a retailer, right, with a lot of different locations. Like one of the biggest things on their balance sheet is going to be cash,
right.
And that cash is going to be in banks all over the place. And especially when you're a retailer, right? Each store probably has its own like banking location. And an auditor for, sure, maybe not every single store location is material, but you've got to do something to do an evaluation of that, right? And so historically, the easiest thing to test in an audit is cash balance. And the reason why that's the case is because it's very easy to reach out to a third party and say, hello, third party, how much cash do we have? Because you could just ask the bank. And it becomes a tick and tie from that perspective. That's what a first year intern would typically like start with. Now you can expand that out into lots of different audit areas as well. And a lot of them are, the more basic things like evaluating whether or not an invoice needed to have been accrued for that was paid after the end of the year. You're like search for open liabilities, that kind of thing, right? Or a like transactionally based transaction set of like, did this transaction actually occur, or did the contract associated with this project actually exist? Like that's a lot of the stuff that you would typically give that first year associate right out of college. And so like that can be a little bit of stuff. Now I think a lot of that work, and I think this is a challenge that will face auditors going forward. Like there will come a time, and it's probably not that far in the future, but there will come a time that is just known data where either it's built into the underlying blockchain for Walmart, or there's enough there's enough information within the data system that allows you to understand that transaction is real and there's really no question about it anymore. And so I think that will be a challenge that faces auditors eventually, is like how do you manage that and what comes next, and then how do you like skill your workforce in the right way for ongoing, because I think I've mentioned this before, is there will come a time really that an auditor is really just a judgment evaluator. So, and did management make reasonable estimates, like as it comes to these things with a lot of uncertainties, what they did, like thoughtful and in the right space? But that's not something that you get on day one. Like there's gonna have to be some way to teach people how to start evaluating that. And if that's the only thing that you do, it's going to be weird to understand exactly how that business model continues to work.
Gotcha.
So yeah, a lot of those first year associates maybe just testing cash balances and tying out bank recs to bank statements and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't know that they'll continue to do that going forward. It'll be a thing to watch for sure, because it does have a significant impact on the overall accounting pipeline, because that's where a lot of
Sure.
people start, is in
Right.
public accounting someplace. So I don't know. We'll see, I guess, is what I would say. Um,
Okay.
so that obviously the layoffs are bad news, but that does mean that there are some extra folks available to take on some roles. So if you find yourself in need, know that there might be a few extra people in the workforce available pool there before long. Um, I saw also in the news that there are a couple different companies that are having some accounting related problems. So Supermicro, which I think, if I remember right, Supermicro are the people who like went really 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 hard into Bitcoin or something like that, I think. And their auditor, who I believe was EY, said, "You know what? I'm over it. I'm out. I'm out. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just gone." And so their Supermicro stock has plummeted significantly because of this, as is often the case when your auditor is out. This was also kind of unexpected. I think it wasn't like a balloon float. It was just a like, nope, gone. Oftentimes you'll have a little bit of a heads up of, hey, we have an accounting issue, or hey, we're going to be a little bit delayed because of X, Y, and Z. And this one was just, hey, we're out. The reason why that's typically a like red flag, is because the as an auditor, you're typically like issuing an opinion, and when you issue an opinion, you have a lot of options. But when you're not even willing to issue an opinion anymore, that means that there's some underlying like straight shenanigans going on. And so of course that like there aren't any more red flags than that, because the auditor is in a position where they have no interest in issuing an opinion anymore, and their only option is to say, management is not going to do the right thing, so we are withdrawing. That is what that is an indicator of, and it doesn't get more red flaggy than that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was bad. A little less bad, ADM, and I'd never heard of ADM before, but it sounds like they have run into the problem that a lot of other folks have of, I just don't have enough accounting team, and so they've actually delayed their filing because of some accounting related issues. Now this one doesn't seem quite as severe, not quite as red flaggy, but anytime that you're not issuing your when you're one of the big filers, that ADM is they're in the like agriculture space, and so have agricultural support and like different things in that area, and so they're running into some problems in getting their stuff done timely. So I saw that news earlier this morning as well. So a couple different companies with some accounting related issues that made big news over the past week.
Yeah, ADM is huge in the food space, and
Yeah.
that was one of our main suppliers of protein when I was doing my nutraceutical company.
Oh yeah. There you go. Well, so nutraceutical providers out there probably running into some potential issues
Mm-hmm.
because well, maybe it gives you a good opportunity to buy in a little low on your on your
I don't
on your
know.
big supplier, maybe.
I don't know.
But
I see the
I don't
price is
know.
going
No,
up there.
yeah, no, that's it's not what you like to see. Anyway,
No, definitely not.
um, in like brighter news, I think the FASB issued a new standard. We'd mentioned it. We'd mentioned this one on the show before, that there was the exposure draft out related to this, but the new standard is to provide a little bit more detail in expenses on your income statement. So a lot of times you could have just a very broad operating expense or cost of sales, right? That were very like high level pieces of detail, or not pieces of detail, like high level, not pieces of detail. But the FASB thought that for public reporting entities, it'd be a little bit better if they broke this into a little bit more detail so that users of the financials could do a little bit more comparison or understand where information was coming from. And so this new standard requires more disclosures related to expenses specifically. That talks about splitting out employee costs, splitting out inventory and inventory purchasing costs, splitting out depreciation, some things that, again, that used to just kind of often, I mean, inventory costs wouldn't do this, but the other costs could just be G&A costs, that kind of thing. But now you have to segregate them a little bit more. It also requires you to add qualitative descriptions for some of the other relevant expensing categories. So anything that didn't fall into this the very definitive breakout, you have to tell a little bit more of a story about what's included in there, so that the user of the financials has a little bit more in-depth understanding of what's going on in the business. And then the new standard specifically requires that there is a definition for selling expenses. So again, oftentimes you'd see G&A and you'd see selling expenses, which is your marketing and advertising and that type of thing. But there wasn't consistency around what went into that bucket. And so you could see selling expenses for one company and selling expenses for another company, but they're just completely different things. And so the FASB has said, you know what, we don't really care whether or not they're completely different things or not, but what you do have to do is you have to tell the user of the financials what's actually in there. What is a selling expense to you? And so those things, I think, are very positive things for users of financial statements, but potentially cumbersome or burdensome for the preparers of financial statements, because now you have this like extra stuff that you have to do. Now, if you're running your business worth any kind of salt, right? You already know that information. This is not like it shouldn't be that huge of a lift. You're not going to end up with like a catch-all bucket of other expenses that exceeds the other categories, hopefully, right? Like you should have a good idea of what's going through your income statement anyway. Now you're just giving more detail to the users.
Okay, note to self: no more 30% of sales for miscellaneous expenses.
Yeah, no, that's no good.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's no good. But if that's your methodology, you could just lay that right out in the footnotes and be like, selling expenses are 30% of 30% of revenues, and then you have a story. No, that's probably not the right thing to do. The last thing that I saw in accounting news, and this is actually from an article that was from forever ago, but for some reason got raised back up. A couple folks, I think this article was from 2004, so it is way back there. Like I was in college when this article was originally issued, but a lot of accountants, I know at least I do, when I think of fraud, I think of the fraud triangle, right? You have incentives and opportunities, you have rationalizations, and whatever the other leg is that I don't remember now. Incentives, opportunity, rational. Maybe that is them. But Wolf and Hermanson, so back in 2004, said, you know what we should have instead? We shouldn't have a fraud triangle. We should have a fraud diamond. So it's that same set of things. It's the same three corners, but with an extra corner now. And that extra corner is human capacity, if you can believe this, Jay. So it's, can the person that is in the spot that has this set of stuff occurring with them, are they smart enough to be able to figure out how to do that thing? Which to me was like a completely a waste of time. And like, I recognize that they went through a lot of effort to do this, but you should be evaluating that in the other parts of that triangle anyway. And so it kind of seems kind of irrelevant to like add another thing in. So all respect to Wolf and Hermanson, but I'm still going to call it the fraud triangle, and we can just evaluate whether or not the person who has got some incentive or opportunity is a dummy on the backside.
Agreed.
So sorry, Wolf and Hermanson, no fraud diamond from me, but we'll see. Maybe it will become mainstream. Maybe the fraud diamond will become mainstream one day. And that is our accounting news. And then a few different tech updates. So another Big Four update, EY, they formed a global AI advisory council. And part of me is like, stop me if you've heard this before, because I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago that KPMG did this, and so it feels like EY is just catching back up. Now they did another thing that I think is a little bit more interesting than their global AI advisory council. Like that, yeah, okay, and that's that they unveiled the competitive edge, and competitive edge is an AI tool for both to pull together from EY specifically internal and external sources to generate real time tailored insights into markets, companies, and sectors. Which, if you're an auditor or an advisor that works for EY or has access to that EY data, that is really relevant, and that is a cool tool. And so I'm definitely excited to see how easy it is to access competitive edge. Like, how much do you have to pay, or is this just for internal use, where only those advisors that are already employees of EY or some partner of EY some way has access to that information? But definitely a cool tool that's being rolled out there at EY. Other tech stuff, Puzzle. Jay, have you ever heard of Puzzle?
I've heard of Puzzle in a few different aspects. I'm not exactly sure if it's the same one. So
Okay.
on with the story. Let's see if we can figure
Yeah,
that
sure. So Puzzle, this Puzzle is an accounting software of some sort that announced a new AI supported solution to automate cash and accrual accounting activities based on like certain rules and policies that you set in place. And so users can say certain different things of if X, then I want this to happen,
out.
and it sounds like Puzzle's new AI tool is supposed to help you to make accruals and understand your cash-based records more powerfully. So cool to see AI being implemented directly in an accounting software to do that type of thing. I do think that it was important, and I wanted to highlight too that the user still has to kind of set the rules and the policies. So you're just making these like fancy rules here that have some there is underlying like machine learning that's supposed to help make it better and better going forward. And so I'm sure that this is going to be a really interesting thing. And I'm sure Puzzle's not the only software company that's going to do something like this. But it is interesting to every time I see AI tech happening in an accounting software, and especially when it comes to like making closes more efficient. I want to know more and I want to hear more. So this is one of those examples.
Yeah, it sounds like they're putting guardrails around it, which is really good,
Right.
and allowing you to customize your own guardrail. So that's
That's right.
beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't know how big Puzzle is, but definitely an interesting use case. And then some things that are happening out in the bill pay space. So a lot of different folks are doing the same types of things here. So FinQuery, which is like a spin management solution or whatnot. They're doing something similar to what Puzzle's doing, where they're like working with you to help to build out prepaids and accruals for contract management, for supporting payments with payment dates and all that kind of stuff. And then Extend, which is like a spin management platform, so a credit card managing platform. They've launched a bill pay solution, which is like par for the course, I think, these days for those spin management platforms. If your spin management platform is just credit card management, probably should look around, maybe talk to our folks at Ramp, because there are lots of other options that exist that couple those two things together to give you the whole AP cycle or payable cycle management stuff. And Extend is now joining the fray in that exact space. And then finally, I thought this one was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say that space has been so barren for so long. There's been no competitor to Bill.com, and now everywhere you turn, there's another one popping up, and it's good for the competition. And
Yeah.
can't wait to see how this ends up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think there's no question. Like the more people that are doing something, the better someone's going to get at it, and eventually
Oh,
that
for
means
sure.
that overall your overall efficiency and ability and all of the different skills and everything that go into spin management, which is an important thing for any business, it just gets better and better and better. So it is great. It is, I make light of it, but it is great to see FinQuery and Extend both making some progress in this space. Then finally, Financial Sense, who I've heard of, but I don't remember much about. They've launched a community-driven template library where folks can share their templates. This, to me, was like a really cool idea, because I think about that a lot in doing like accounting support advisory. Like it's nice to know that at least if you are part of a community that you can pull from other people's resources. It's the same idea really as what we just talked about with spend management platforms, where when you pull together more ideas, you get better ideas and more powerful ideas, and then better versions. The more you get to see of stuff, the better you get to doing it. And so it's great that Financial Sense is doing this, because it is community driven too. So it's not Financial Sense saying, here's the template you should use. It's Financial Sense saying, like, here's a spot where you can drop your templates or find other people's templates for different areas and areas of support. So really, really glad to see that happening. I don't know, Jay, do you know, are there other communities that are like this, that already have like the pools of templates out there?
Yeah, there are a couple others out there. I mean,
Yeah.
Ignition, for example, there are services libraries out there that you can, share and get access to.
Sure.
And the other one that I could think of is even way back when, in the mid-teens, 2015, 16, we were using Carbon, and they had templates for workflow that you could load. So there's a lot of companies that do that, and they'll take their users and get you to upload your templates and allow others to use them and customize them for their own use. So
yeah,
very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So be on the lookout for that, and certainly if you're partnered already with Financial Sense, know that that community is coming, and be aware that that's a spot that you can use as a resource for you as well. And that, Jay, is the last of the news. Unless there's anything I missed, Jay, is there any news that I missed?
Not at the moment. I mean, I'm trying to listen for the news going on out there, but nothing new.
Yeah, polls are about to close. Whew. It's about to happen.
We've
about to get
had a
it's
pretty good
about to
run
get real,
there
Jay.
today. So yeah.
Absolutely. So with that, we'll then move to our main conversation point for today. Automations, right? Automations are all the rage, right? With advancements in AI and the underlying technology, we hear about it all the time. I'm using AI XYZ to do ABC, and it's just giving me all the free time in the world. I can do whatever I want now. Now, obviously, that's not quite the case, but I do know that we're seeing, just like we talked about with Extend and FinQuery and with Puzzle, right? We're seeing this continued automation support, this continued effort for companies to go out and be that background that helps you to be more efficient. And so today on the Practice Playbook, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about automations. We're going to talk about the practical aspects of automations. And so with that in mind, Jay, I guess my first question is this, and maybe this is too simple of a question, but I'm curious. I'm curious what your opinion is about it. But what's an automation? What does that even mean? What is an automation? What is that?
Well, if you look at it from a practical standpoint, it's getting a result from a starting point with little interaction on your own part.
Yeah.
Think of a assembly line. You have parts and pieces moving across that line. You have, and I can talk about this in the practical sense of the production lines that I had running when I was in the manufacturing side. And, you had a bottle pass an electronic eye. It sent a signal, drop the powder into that, and you would have it set to a specific amount. It would take its next jog up, another bottle would come, hit that eye, same thing. And as it's going to hit a scale. And here's where your QC comes in play. If it's without of that tolerance, then it gets pushed off the line and sent for double checking or modification. And if it passes, it goes down to the next section where a lid's put on it. And then it goes to the next section where the bottle is tightened and the lid is tightened. And then where they put the seal on it and then put the shrink on it. So all that's automating. Now, think about all of that if you had to do that manually. How many people would you need to do that? A lot, yeah. And, I learned about production automation in a pharmaceutical plant. And there are 3 people running a line that was producing a a shit ton of product. And
Yeah, love it.
basically, you basically had 3 people there just watching for, and it was set up and it had a traffic light system. So as long as those lights were green, you were good. And if there was an issue popping up, it turned yellow or orange. And then if there was a failure, it would be red. So they're making sure it's green and making sure things are moving, and they're going to pick things up. But basically, once you've dropped the formula in there and you set everything up, it runs on its own. And you think about the amount of time that you put into doing that work manually, and by doing it manually, how much product fails due to intolerance on that size. And think about that. So let's move this into our practice. It's
Right.
like, how many people do we need to do all this work? And if we are taking data from one platform to another, are we better off taking it and moving it automatically or doing the data entry? And, I could tell you data entry when we are using automation is cut. Data entry errors are cut in like 85%. I mean, it is almost eliminated. It's still there because some of the input is wrong. So
Right.
you still end up having some issues with it, but ultimately it's not as from the automation. So, and for me, when I started in my accounting practice, it was just me. And I had to do all the work. I had to drive across town to go to a networking meeting, and then drive across town to meet a new client, and then drive across town the other way to see a client.
Yeah, sure.
And, I did not have the time to get the work done. So
Right.
I just had to, find ways to
That's a good
automate it.
one.
And that's when I started using Zapier and building automations. And one of my favorite automation way back when, and I wish I could find it, and I've talked about it, it's like a 38-step onboarding automation. Now, you can actually break those down in Zapier now and put them in much smaller pieces. But it was long. But
Yeah.
it took the process. A prospect would hit the website, they'd put in a contact form, they'd automatically get an email to book a call. The call was booked, I'd have the call, and then I'd update my CRM, which already has that information in it because it got put in there from the mission. I would go and put a tag in it or update it with some information. It would then put the contact into Practice Ignition now. And
Yeah.
I would just go in and take 5 minutes to create my proposal, send it out. Client signed that, and then it did all the setup. It created my folders. It created all of the onboarding emails, and it just went on like that. And it worked really well. And pretty much it was 3 manual touches to go from prospect to full-on engage onboarding client. And
Yeah.
and so think about that. And I would rather spend the time to build that automation than to do that every time I had a new client.
There's no question.
And, yeah. So
Right. And so I think that that's a great place to talk about it a little bit more, right? The reason why automations are so valuable is because they let you, as the business owner, focus on things that either A, like you care about, or B, you're good at. We're accountants
right.
and advisors, right? We're not onboarders. We're not necessarily we're mostly not salespeople. Like that's
Right.
not where we that's not our specific skill set. And so if you can build in automations that allow those processes that are important to running your business, like it's very critical that you have
Yeah.
an onboarding process, but if you can build automations to take you out of that process, to make sure that it's consistent across everyone that sees it, and make sure that it's also functioning effectively across
Right.
those people that see it, right? That allows you so much time to be able to focus on the things that are most important to you and your business. And so there's no question that automations in those areas where you're not skilled are critical and can be so powerful in giving you time back and giving you the ability to onboard even more clients, to growing your business. There are so many different ways that even these smaller automations can be powerful for you.
Yeah.
And
So go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I think that there are things that you don't think about of ways that there are platforms out there that exist that are built with the intention of making these automations easy for you. There are resources that exist to highlight them for you as well. And there's just a lot of different areas within your practice that you can use automation in a lot of different ways. And so, Jay, I think that may have been what you were about to talk about. But I'm curious, like, where do you see the best uses for automation in an accounting practice?
Well, I mean, I'll get to that in a second, but I
Sure.
mean, a lot of the platforms we are using are building in automation through API connections
Right.
to allow us to push invoices into Zero, to push payments and things like that. And so those are helping us with what we are working on today. Now, there are other things that we can do to streamline all of that, but for me, where I see the value is uh, and you mentioned it, we are accountants. We're not salespeople. We're not marketers. So,
Right.
one of those things is to automate some of that marketing that we're doing.
Yeah.
And, uh, and I know this was going to be a question later, but, and I had just today, I was working on some blogs that I had given to a teammate to post for us.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, have you thought about social content?" I'm like, no, I haven't. But I have an automation that can do that.
Right.
So over the weekend, my wife runs a small mental health counseling practice, and she posts blogs, but she hasn't posted a social post about them since 2018.
Hmm.
Yeah, imagine that. So I'm thinking, okay, how do we fix that? So I'm thinking, okay, well, first step is when that blog is posted on WordPress, let's pull that out and get the details of that blog post. So I started with make.com and Airtable. And basically, anytime my wife or somebody posts a blog for her, it's going to trigger, basically tell make.com that this has happened and start an automation. Now, that automation sets forth, it's going to go in and read that blog, pull the data out of that blog, basically scrape it and pull the data out of it. It's going to go into it and pull the images off of it, and then push all of that information into ChatGPT, which then summarizes that article, which goes into another ChatGPT module, which writes a social post on the summarization, which then saves it into Airtable.
Yeah.
And currently, it's also set up to auto post it.
There you
Now,
go.
knowing better than that, I don't want that to auto post it.
Sure.
Although it's better than nothing. But I mean, if you really want it to engage, you want to be able to look at it and approve it and things like that.
Right.
So, that's and yeah, that's the automation, whatever. But
Well,
so today I was asked, hey, have you done this? So basically I didn't attach it to the High Rock blog, but I just pulled that automation down that makes scenario,
right.
and chopped off the front end and the back end of it and attached it to a Google Sheet and set it up so anytime a new row is created, it'll trigger it and take what's in that first part of that row, run it through the same process, and copy it back into that spreadsheet.
There you go.
So
And so my
now,
question, Jay, and I think a
yeah,
lot of people's question, right, is that automation has a lot of power, right? It
yeah,
has a lot of that's gonna. I want to highlight for everyone, right? Think about what you're doing there. You already spent
yeah,
some time creating a blog post. You were doing this work. You're now really what you're effectively doing is like cross utilizing your own work, right? And so you're saving
yeah,
yourself the time from having to create the full on like, oh man, I wrote this blog, it's got these cool points, but I want to like put it in the right format for Instagram or for Twitter or for Facebook or wherever, right?
right,
And so you've built an automation that saves you that time every single time that you do this. And
yeah,
so if you have a weekly newsletter or something like that, now you're saving that time every single week.
yep.
And so that will obviously pile up. My question for you, Jay, is how long does writing an automation like that take?
That took, well, it was about 2.5 hours. Now, mind
Yeah.
you, I had the TV on, paying attention to qualifying in
Well, there you
Martinsville.
go.
So,
Yeah.
I was distracted and playing with it. And, I was, not only was I building this out, but I also have a bunch of notes on enhancements I want to make to it as well.
Right.
So,
Sure.
and in Airtable, as I was doing it, and not only did I do the automation, I was building out the database for it as well. And
Yeah.
in Airtable, instead of just having that script run, and basically what I figured the post was going to be on LinkedIn or on a Facebook page. So I put in the prompt to be a professional post fitting for LinkedIn, or put all that,
Yeah.
built it in. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to set this up so that when it is done, when I put in my, and basically what this is I want to put an idea in and have it give me, it's multi-step, an idea, give me an outline for a blog, allow me to update that, approve it, and then go in and write the blog.
Yeah.
Allow me to approve it and then post it, and then from there do the whole thing. And
Yeah.
from that point, say, okay, I want this to go into these 4 social media platforms.
Right.
So I also built out a table for all the social media platforms with the
Yeah.
appropriate prompt for each one.
There you go.
So, because X is this, it's 280 characters. You want it to be this type of verbiage. You want it to go on Instagram. You want it to be maybe you want it to be a carousel. It'll actually make it will be able to make multiple images for the
Yeah.
carousel by the time I'm done from the post,
Yeah.
and things like that, and utilizing that where you are specifying the proper tone and proper content for each platform, it makes it better. And you could put that prompt right in the database. You want it to be like, witty and funny or have your tone. You could tell it to do that. And the
Yep.
other thing about that is if you want to train it to your specific, to understand all of your tweets versus your Instagram posts, you could create your own custom GPT and make an assistant to pull in that ChatGPT module to
Right.
write that for you. So there's so much we could do with this at this point.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. So
Right. And so again, this is an area where you just described a couple different things in the conversation that we've had here.
yeah,
You started by describing a sales onboarding lead process, right? Where someone has gone to your website, maybe they read your blog, were
yep,
very interested, were like, not only is this valuable information for me, but I was already thinking about getting a new accountant anyway. So let me send you my information, right? Which then populates your CRM system, helps to build out calendars for you to be able to meet with these people, to have the conversations that you need to understand, maybe even in advance, whether or not they're going to be a good fit for you or not, whether they fall into the area of the accounting space that you want to focus on, your niche. Um, like you can build an automation that allows you to do all of that right at the very beginning. So that's on the sales side. Then on the
yep,
marketing side, you can say, here's the thing I want to talk about today because it's relevant to me and it's something that I have some passion about. And you can allow that automation to build out a blog post, a newsletter article, a cross promotional post across 4 or 5 different social media platforms, all from one idea. And so when you think
yeah,
about that it took you 2.5 hours to create it, right? But think about all the time that it would take to do all of those things anyway,
right,
individually, and then now you're going to be able to multiply it because you can do it again and again and again. And so that's the value of automation is it takes all of those manual tasks, those time-consuming tasks that you have on your plate as a business owner and as a leader or a manager or whatever it may be, right? To take that all off of your plate and allow it to still happen so you still get the result that you would have had, but now you just don't have to put in the same level of effort. um,
right,
that that is what automations are for. And I think that if your firm is a cloud-based firm, if your firm is focused on cloud-based technology, you'll see those automations. You'll see companies like Extend and like Ramp and like even Bill.com that are automation tools. That's exactly what they are. They are spend management automation tools because they do the same thing that we're talking about, where they allow you to input one set of data, allow you to identify the things that are critical in that information, and then allow you to skip all of the steps of the like tedious work and do it all at once. And so if you think about automation in that way, like you can apply it to every single area of your practice. You should
for
you
sure.
should be using. I mean, you should be using spend management for your own books
So,
because.
so you brought up spend management, and so today I was working on a client. I had to pay a $50 registration fee
Hmm.
for a sales tax registration
Hmm.
application. So I did that, put it on my RAM card, and built into the platform, I got a text. Hey, thank you for your purchase. Now send your receipt. So I did that, pushed it on through. Now, on some of those where I am getting monthly uh, receipts or invoices emailed to me, I
Hmm.
know that they need to go to Ramp, so I just have an autoresponder in my email. Well, it's actually yeah, it's in the email. So I just set up an autoresponder to email to Ramp anything that comes from Zapier or comes from my Microsoft invoice or any of this. So it's handling it in the background. So
Right.
think about what we could do with email and
Yeah.
automation there, and that's something else. That's a future
Yeah.
automation of the week we'll talk about.
Yeah. And so I do think that is I think like talking through that of that this was just a primer, right, of what
Oh,
automations
for
can
sure.
do for you. There are so many applications of automations throughout your business practice, be that on the sales and invoicing side, be that on the spend management side, be that on the marketing side. There's not a part of your business that automation and being thoughtful about automation can't help your business improve.
Yep.
And so that will be a thing that we talk about a lot going forward. Probably in the last little segment of our show, at least for now, that I'm going to call automation of the week. And so, Jay, I know we just spent a lot of time talking about automations. Is that our automation of the week? Is this a marketing one, or
Actually,
you got
no.
another one?
While we were just sitting here, it made me think of something else.
Yeah,
So, what's my passion, Chris? What am I passionate about? What's my favorite thing to do when I'm not working?
NASCAR,
NASCAR, yes.
pizza.
So,
Wait,
well, that too. But
yeah,
which reminds me, I'm out of flour. I gotta get that. But
there you go. Glad
NASCAR,
to help.
and I have
Automation.
a NASCAR YouTube channel, and
Yeah.
NASCAR on YouTube. Like I said, I have a
Uh-huh.
channel on TikTok and Instagram, and I have a automation set up that pulls an RSS or it's
Yep. RSS,
it's
whatever it is.
an
Describe it.
RSS
What does it
feed.
do? It's like a feed.
Basically, it lists out the blog posts that have posted on certain sites,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
it's something syndication. I can't think of what it
Oh okay.
stands
Sure.
for. So basically, it takes the first 10 headlines, goes out to Claude, has Claude analyze them, and spit out the top three,
Yeah.
which then
Themes.
ChatGPT puts into a tweet format, and it's posted to Twitter daily.
Wow. Right on. So there you go. That
Yes.
imagine that application. This is obviously an application related to NASCAR, which isn't necessarily how you would run your business, but the application is the same.
Top
Top three
three
news articles.
of the day in accounting
Right.
and tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
love it. I think that's a super, super great thing, and it's probably something we should explore a little bit as we continue on in the podcast here or in the show here.
Most definitely.
So wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us today. This was or is and will continue to be the Practice Playbook. We'll come to you next week when we talk about some other topic that will be relevant to your practice and highlight another automation of the week, and then bring you the news and notes. Hopefully with some news and notes that include election results and what to do about it. Maybe
Sure.
I guess we'll find out. Well,
And if you're watching
again,
this, you have an automation. Yeah, post it down in the comments. Let's hear what your needs are, and maybe we can make that our automation of the week going forward. So
share the automations of the week. Share
what you
your
got.
automation, and we'll talk about it here and highlight it for those people that watch with you. So thank you for watching. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.